The diner went silent the moment fear walked through the door. Strangers judged before listening. Then a child spoke one sentence that changed everything. A tattoo, a memory, a truth buried for years. What followed was not violence, but precision. Not revenge, but justice. And one man who had already survived war chose restraint over rage. Stay with this story to see how quiet strength exposes corruption and restores what fear tried to destroy. Like, comment, and subscribe for stories where justice still matters. The room that went quiet. The rain had stopped minutes earlier, leaving the highway wrapped in mist and the air smelling of wet asphalt and pine. The diner sat alone off the two-lane road, a square building of brick and glass with warm yellow light glowing from inside. It was the kind of place truckers trusted and families stopped at without thinking twice. Inside, forks clinked, coffee steamed, and a small radio hummed with an old country song. At the corner counter sat Daniel Hart, 41 years old, white American of European descent. He was tall and broad-shouldered, though time and war had carved weight into his posture. His red-black flannel shirt was buttoned to the collar, sleeves rolled once. Faded blue jeans creased at the knees. Brown, low-cut leather boots rested flat on the tile, positioned carefully to favor his left leg. A slight limp followed him everywhere, a quiet souvenir from a place he never spoke about. Daniel's dark brown eyes scanned the room without seeming to. His neatly trimmed beard showed faint gray at the temples. He looked like a man waiting for nothing and ready for anything. At his feet lay Ranger, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a traditional black and tan coat. The dog's muscular body was still, ears upright, amber-brown eyes alert. A black harness hugged his frame, a white patch clear and unmistakable. Service dog, do not pet. Ranger did not sleep, he observed. Daniel had chosen the booth facing the entrance. Old habit. The door opened, letting in damp air and a low murmur from outside. A waitress named Ellen Moore, early 50s, gray-blonde hair pulled into a bun, friendly but tired eyes, glanced up with a practiced smile. It froze halfway across her face. The sound followed before the sight. Engines, deep rolling thunder that vibrated the windows and crawled into the bones of the building. Conversation stalled. A child stopped laughing. Someone dropped a spoon. 8 motorcycles pulled into the parking lot, headlights cutting through the mist. Leather-clad riders dismounted with controlled ease. No shouting, no bravado, just presence. Inside, fear arrived before judgment could catch up. A man whispered something under his breath. A woman pulled her purse closer. 2 teenagers slid their phones face down on the table. Daniel did not move. Ranger's ears tilted forward a fraction. The door opened again. The riders entered in a staggered line, boots heavy, water dripping onto the mat. Black leather vests bore patches worn smooth with years. Tattoos climbed forearms and disappeared beneath collars. These were not young men. Most were past 50, faces marked by sun, wind, and long roads. At their center walked Marcus Hale, late 50s, tall and thick through the chest. His hair was dark with silver threaded through it. His jaw was squared, his expression unreadable. He moved with the authority of someone used to rooms changing when he entered them. Eyes followed him, judged him. Daniel felt the shift. Fear without cause often led to injustice. He had seen it before. Different uniforms, same instinct. Ellen stepped forward, forcing professionalism over nerves. "You can take the back booths," she said, voice steady but tight. Marcus nodded once. "Appreciate it." The group moved as directed. No comments, no challenges. They slid into 2 booths, leather creaking softly. Marcus took the seat facing outward, eyes sweeping the diner once, then resting. Daniel caught his gaze for a brief second. 2 men measuring the same silence. Marcus looked away first. Orders were placed. Coffee, pie, nothing more. The room did not relax. At a booth near the window sat Noah Brooks, 8 years old, small for his age with curious eyes and a cowlick that refused to stay flat. He wore a faded hoodie and sneakers with untied laces. Across from him sat his grandmother, Margaret Brooks, late 60s, short, careful posture, hands folded tight around her purse. Her eyes never left the bikers. Noah leaned forward, chin in his hands. Fascination replaced fear. Children noticed what adults forgot to question. Daniel saw it before it happened. Ranger shifted, silent. Noah slid out of the booth. "Sit down," Margaret whispered sharply, panic edging her voice. Noah didn't hear her. He walked straight toward the back booths. A fork paused in midair. Ellen stopped at the counter, coffee pot frozen in her grip. Marcus noticed the child immediately. One of the bikers stiffened. Another lifted his head. Noah stopped beside Marcus, barely reaching the table's edge. He looked up, eyes wide, unafraid. "Hello, sir," Noah said, clear and polite. Marcus waited. So did everyone else. "My mom has a tattoo just like yours." Silence fell hard. Marcus's eyes dropped to his forearm, where dark ink curled beneath rolled leather. His jaw tightened, not in anger, but recognition sharpened by caution. Daniel felt Ranger tense, not aggressive, alert. Margaret stood abruptly. "Noah, come back here right now." Marcus raised one hand. The motion was calm, controlled. Margaret froze. "What kind of tattoo?" Marcus asked. Noah smiled. "A bird with fire and chains. She keeps it covered now." Marcus leaned back slowly. Around him, men who had faced violence without flinching held perfectly still. Daniel exhaled through his nose. The past had just stepped through the door, and it did not care who was ready. The weight of restraint, the silence did not break. It thickened. Rainwater dripped from leather sleeves onto the diner floor, the sound sharp in the stillness. Marcus Hale kept his eyes on the boy, not with threat, but with something guarded and searching. Years of command had taught him when force was useless and when patience carried more weight. Noah stood his ground, hands clasped behind his back, the way his teacher had taught him. He sensed importance, not danger. "What's your mother's name?" Marcus asked. Before the boy could answer, Margaret Brooks found her voice again, strained and sharp. "That's enough. He doesn't understand what he's saying. Noah, now!" Daniel Hart shifted slightly in his booth. His left knee protested, but he ignored it. Ranger remained still, eyes flicking between the child, the bikers, and the door. Daniel watched Marcus closely. This was the moment when men revealed themselves. Marcus did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He turned his head toward Margaret, meeting her gaze squarely. "Ma'am," he said, calm and level, "I won't touch him. I won't scare him. I just want to understand why he said that." Margaret hesitated. Her hands trembled against her purse strap. She looked around the diner, saw the fear reflected in other faces, and felt it tighten her chest. Noah tugged at her sleeve. "It's okay, Grandma. He's not mean." That simple sentence cut deeper than any accusation. Marcus looked back to the boy. "Go ahead." Noah straightened. "Her name's Emily. Emily Brooks. She works at the hospital. She's a nurse. She told me the tattoo was from before she became a mom." Marcus's face changed. Not dramatically, just enough. A flicker behind the eyes. Recognition mixed with disbelief. Around him, the other bikers exchanged glances. One of them, Caleb Finch, early 60s, heavy-set with a weathered face and gray beard, leaned back slowly. Another, Evan Ruiz, late 40s, lean, sharp-eyed, studied Noah with quiet interest. Margaret's breath caught. She saw it too. Something had landed. Marcus folded his hands on the table. "Does your mom ever talk about that time?" Noah shook his head. "Not really. Grandma doesn't like it. Mom says it helped her learn who she was." Margaret bristled. "That was a mistake," she snapped, fear sharpening into anger. A phase she barely survived. Daniel watched the exchange, his gaze steady. He had seen mothers and sons torn apart by things never spoken aloud. He had learned that restraint was not weakness. It was discipline. Marcus nodded once, acknowledging Margaret's words without arguing. "Sometimes phases save people," he said, "even if they scare everyone else." The room stirred. A man at the counter scoffed under his breath. Another diner whispered something about trouble. Daniel stood. The movement drew attention immediately. He rose carefully, favoring his left leg. Red-black flannel stretching across his broad shoulders. Ranger stood with him, silent, controlled. Daniel turned slightly so the room could see the white patch on the harness. He did not raise his voice. "There's no trouble here," Daniel said. "Everyone breathe." His tone was firm, practiced. The kind that carried without force. Years of command lived in it. A few people relaxed without realizing why. Marcus looked at Daniel for the first time with interest. He nodded once in thanks. Margaret swallowed. "My daughter nearly ruined her life back then," she said, voice cracking. "She came home angry, lost, covered in ink and bad decisions. It took years to get her straight." Marcus did not interrupt. "She almost didn't become a nurse," Margaret continued. "Almost didn't become a mother. You people were part of that. The word you landed hard." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "And you're right to be angry," he said, "but you're wrong about one thing." Margaret stiffened. "She didn't survive in spite of that life," Marcus said. "She survived because of it." A murmur rippled through the diner. "She pulled a man from a burning wreck," Marcus continued. "Stayed with him until help came, knowing it could explode. She talked another off a bridge. She gave blood when no one else could. She wasn't lost. She was becoming." Margaret's eyes filled despite herself. "She never told me that." Marcus's voice softened. "She didn't need praise. She needed permission to leave when she was ready." Noah looked between them, confused but sensing something important. "She said she had to choose me," he said simply. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Daniel felt the weight of it settle in his chest. Choice. Sacrifice. Leaving one family to build another. He knew that road. Ellen approached cautiously with a tray of coffee refills. Her hands no longer shook. "Ma'am," Marcus said to Margaret, "I won't ask you to trust us, but I will ask you to let your daughter decide what to remember." He reached into his vest slowly and pulled out a simple card. No logo, just a name and number. He slid it across the table, stopping short of Margaret's hand. "If she wants," Marcus said, "she can call. If she doesn't, that's her right." Margaret stared at the card as if it carried weight beyond paper. Noah smiled up at Marcus. "Will you tell her you saw me?" Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "I think she'll know." Daniel returned to his seat. Ranger lay back down, tension easing. The diner breathed again. But something had changed. Fear had been replaced by understanding, and the past had begun to loosen its grip. Justice did not always arrive loud. Sometimes it arrived with restraint. What the past refused to bury, the diner emptied slowly after the bikers left. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just the scrape of chairs and the soft murmur of voices that had lost their edge. People paid their checks, nodded to Ellen, and avoided looking too closely at Daniel Hart, or the booth where the bikers had sat. Daniel remained where he was. Ranger lay at his feet, head up, ears relaxed but listening. Outside, dusk settled in layers, gray folding into blue. The road beyond the windows shimmered with leftover rain. Margaret Brooks sat stiffly across from Noah, the small white card still resting on the table between them. She had not touched it. Noah swung his legs beneath the booth. "Grandma," he said quietly, "Mom wasn't bad, right?" Margaret closed her eyes. The question cut deeper than any accusation. "No," she said after a moment, "she was never bad." Daniel watched from his booth, not intruding, but aware. Some wounds surfaced only when a child asked the wrong question. The bell above the diner door chimed again. A man stepped inside, shaking rain from his jacket. Howard Lyle, mid-40s, narrow face, thinning hair, wire-rimmed glasses, wore a pressed button-down shirt and slacks too neat for the road. His eyes flicked quickly around the room, cataloging faces. When he spotted Margaret, he hesitated, then forced a smile. "There you are," he said. "I've been looking for you." Margaret stiffened. "Howard," she said flatly. Howard glanced toward Daniel and Ranger, then toward the back booths. "Everything all right here?" he asked, voice thinly polite. Daniel's gaze sharpened. Ranger's ears lifted. Howard Lyle worked for the county hospital. Daniel knew the type. Administrators who spoke softly and hid sharp edges behind policy. Margaret folded her hands over the card. "We're fine." Howard leaned closer. "I heard there were bikers here, caused a scene." "No," Noah said quickly. "They were nice." Howard laughed, brittle. "I'm sure they seemed that way." Daniel stood. Howard noticed the movement and faltered. "I didn't mean—" "You did," Daniel said calmly. Howard swallowed. "I'm just concerned. People like that bring problems. Bad history." Daniel took one step closer, limp barely visible but present. "History doesn't make crimes," he said. "People do." Howard flushed. "You don't know what you're talking about." Daniel smiled thinly. "I know exactly what I'm talking about." Margaret looked between them, uneasy. "Howard, why are you here?" Howard adjusted his glasses. "Emily missed a shift change meeting. Again. I came to remind her family that professionalism matters." Noah frowned. "Mom was working overtime." Howard ignored him. "There are standards." Daniel's eyes hardened. He recognized the smell of injustice. Quiet, bureaucratic, the kind that crushed people slowly. "You pressure nurses like her," Daniel said. "Long hours, no support. Then you question their commitment." Howard bristled. "Who are you?" "Someone who recognizes a pattern," Daniel said. Howard scoffed. "This isn't your business." Daniel leaned in just enough. It becomes my business when decent people are cornered. Howard glanced at Ranger, unsettled by the dog's steady stare. I'll speak to Emily directly, he muttered. Margaret stood. You'll do no such thing, she said, surprising even herself. You will leave. Howard opened his mouth, then closed it. The room felt suddenly smaller. He backed toward the door. This isn't over. Daniel watched him go. When the door closed, silence returned. Margaret exhaled shakily. Emily's been under pressure for months, she said. They cut staff, then blamed the nurses. Daniel nodded. People like Howard hide behind systems. He glanced at the card. And sometimes the past holds leverage. Margaret followed his gaze. You think those men? I think, Daniel said carefully. Your daughter earned respect where it mattered, and that respect doesn't fade. Noah smiled. Mom's strong. Daniel crouched slightly, meeting the boy's eyes. Yes, he said. She is. Outside, the road lights flickered on. Far away, engines echoed faintly. Already gone. But what they had left behind was heavier than sound. Truth had a way of resurfacing, and Daniel sensed the deeper scheme now unfolding. This was not just about a tattoo or a memory, it was about power pressing down on the wrong people, and that never ended quietly. Precision in the dark, a cold front rolled in before dawn, dragging clouds low over the county like a warning unspoken. Daniel Hart stood outside the hospital parking structure, red-black flannel buttoned against the wind, boots planted wide on the damp concrete. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly. Ranger sat at his left side, 5 years old, black and tan coat still, ears upright, amber eyes fixed on the entrance. Daniel checked his watch. 5:42 a.m., night shift turnover. Inside, the hospital moved like a machine on borrowed mercy. Nurses shuffled out exhausted. Day staff arrived with coffee, boy, and forced smiles. And somewhere between them, quiet decisions were being made that ruined good people. Daniel watched Howard Lyle exit through the side door, coat pulled tight, phone pressed to his ear. Howard's shoulders were tense. He spoke quickly, voice sharp, cutting. Daniel followed at a distance, limp barely noticeable, but constant. Ranger moved without command. Howard reached his car, unlocked it, then froze. A shadow detached itself from the concrete pillar beside him. Marcus Hale stepped into the light. Late 50s, broad chest, leather jacket zipped halfway. No patches visible, just a man with a presence that bent space around him. 2 others stood nearby, not blocking exits, just existing where they could not be ignored. Howard swallowed hard. Who are you? Marcus smiled faintly. Someone who remembers Emily Brooks. Howard's eyes flicked to Daniel, then to Ranger. Panic flared. I don't know what this is. It's accountability, Marcus said quietly. Daniel stepped forward. You've been falsifying performance reviews, he said, targeting staff who won't play along, pressuring overtime without compensation, threatening licensure. Howard scoffed weakly. You can't prove that. Marcus nodded once. Evan Ruiz stepped forward and placed a folder on the hood of Howard's car. Inside were copies, emails, timestamps, audio transcripts. Howard's face drained of color. You didn't expect nurses to talk, Marcus said, or for anyone to listen. Howard backed into his car. This is harassment. Daniel shook his head. This is restraint. Ranger took 1 step forward, not aggressive, certain. Howard's hand trembled as he reached for his phone. Marcus leaned in just enough. Call your lawyer, he said. Then call your board. You're done. Police lights flashed at the far end of the lot. Not rushing, on time. Howard sagged. As officers approached, Daniel stepped back. He had no interest in spectacle. Justice worked best when it was clean. Margaret Brooks stood at the edge of the lot, coat wrapped tight, eyes wide but steady. Beside her was Emily Brooks, 36, brown hair pulled back, tired eyes that held strength earned the hard way. She wore scrubs beneath a jacket, shoulders squared. Emily looked from Daniel to Marcus, then to the officers placing Howard in cuffs. You didn't have to, she said softly. Daniel met her gaze. Someone did. Marcus nodded. You carried enough alone. Emily's eyes filled, but she did not cry. I left that life because I wanted peace. Marcus's voice was gentle. And you built it. The officers led Howard away. The sky began to lighten. Daniel turned, already fading back into the quiet he preferred. Ranger followed, Justice had been served without chaos. That was the only kind that lasted. What remains after justice? Morning arrived quietly. The storm clouds broke apart over the town, revealing a pale blue sky that felt earned rather than given. Sunlight filtered through the diner windows again, softer now, less suspicious. The world had not changed, not really, but the weight on it had shifted. Daniel Hart sat in the same booth as before, red-black flannel unchanged, faded jeans creased at the knees. Ranger lay at his feet, 5 years old, black and tan coat catching the light, amber eyes calm. The dog rested now. The work was done. Across the diner, Margaret Brooks stirred her coffee without drinking it. Her hands no longer trembled. Beneath her sat Emily Brooks, 36, white American, brown hair pulled back neatly, wearing a simple sweater and slacks after a long shift. Her posture was straight, her eyes tired but clear. Emily looked around the room. "I used to be afraid of places like this," she said quietly. "Afraid someone would recognize me, judge me." Margaret nodded slowly. "I was afraid too," she admitted. "Afraid of what you were. Afraid of what I didn't understand." Daniel listened without intruding. Some conversations needed space. Emily took a breath. "That part of my life taught me how to stand when everything burns. It taught me loyalty. It taught me when to leave." Margaret reached across the table and covered her daughter's hand. "I see that now." The door opened. Marcus Hale stepped inside alone, no vest, no leather, just a man with silver threaded through his hair and a steady walk. He stopped us when he saw Emily. They regarded each other for a long moment. Marcus spoke first. "You look well." Emily smiled faintly. "You always said I would." They sat. No grand reunion, just shared silence. "I told them everything," Margaret said. "What you did, who you were." Marcus nodded. "That's enough." Outside, Daniel stood. Ranger rose with him. Emily followed him to the door. "Thank you," she said. Daniel met her eyes. "You earned it." She nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. As Daniel and Ranger walked back into the daylight, the town felt lighter. Justice had not come from anger. It had come from truth, restraint, and people willing to stand when it mattered. The diner returned to its rhythm, and somewhere between the past and the present, healing took root. Justice does not always arrive with noise or force. Sometimes it comes quietly, carried by restraint, truth, and the courage to stand without hatred. In this story, justice was not revenge. It was accountability. It was the willingness to protect the innocent without becoming cruel. Faith often works the same way. It does not shout, it waits. It asks people to do what is right, even when no one is watching. Emily's past did not disappear when she chose a new life. It became the strength that allowed her to save others. Daniel's service did not end when he left the battlefield. It became discernment, discipline, and protection offered without pride. Redemption is not about erasing who we were. It is about carrying what was good forward and laying down what no longer belongs. Communities heal when people stop judging by fear and start seeing by truth. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment about a moment in your life when quiet strength mattered. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice, faith, and redemption. May God bless you with clarity when truth is needed, courage when action is required, and peace when justice is done.